Hello again, LinkedIn. It's only been a couple of hours since you saw my face here on LinkedIn, and I'm back. Since I started interviewing all those amazing people that I have been bringing into conversations with myself and with all of you, my goal has really been to do one LinkedIn live broadcast per day, and I skipped Monday. So here I am doing two on Friday. But it's not just that. It's also that I'm coming across so many interesting people. And I just can't say, oh, it's going to be in 2 weeks, or I'm so eager to ask the questions. I'm so eager to talk to them. And I've been very honest with all of you. There's a big part of me that does it, for all of you, and to bring value, and to, create conversation and teach things, and, have all these insights. But really, there's a big part of me that does it completely selfishly for myself. I'm choosing to speak with people who are interesting, who are doing cool things, and then I can't wait to talk to them. Then it has to be, it feels so urgent. And today, we are finally talking about the topic that I'm really, really, it's one of my top interests, things I'm learning right now, something that's really important to me. And it's video. No surprise, here I am. Um, I've always been very self-conscious to be on video, and a lot of people shy away from video because it's so intimidating. You feel you don't look yourself, you don't sound yourself, you're afraid you're going to stumble. It's very, very intimidating. But since I pushed myself and started doing, you might have seen my recruitment drive videos that I was posting with my co-founder, Moran, and going on, doing interviews where people were interviewing me. Then I taught a class at a university, and it was recorded, and I had to watch myself for a couple of hours. I've gotten much more comfortable with it. And now, when I speak to people, fellow entrepreneurs or job seekers who are really looking to stand out from the crowd, and let's be honest, because of the pandemic, a lot more job seekers are going to have to work extra hard to stand out. The market has shifted so unexpectedly and so drastically. So I keep telling people, do video. And there are a few hesitations that I hear, and I'm sure that we'll discuss all of them with my awesome guest today. Some people are just, again, self-conscious about how they look, how they sound, uncomfortable. Mostly, though, people just overthink it. What's going to be my angle? How do I make it unique? I want to make it funny. That's really hard. Even for people who are funny, I'm not funny. But even to those that are like, how are you going to create videos that are always funny? Or what's going to be my gimmick? What's going to be my angle? And then is that gimmick going to carry through for a long time? And then there's just so much overthinking that you never do it. But video is an incredibly important part of your marketing strategy. And we're not talking organizations today. We're talking for personal branding. If you're like me, if you're an entrepreneur, business owner, again, job seeker, it's just crucial. Because, okay, so if you don't believe me and you think I'm biased, you'll believe the numbers. By 2020, we're 2020. By the end of 2020, video will account for 82% of all online traffic. Like, that's crazy. 82%. That's crazy, right? So if you're still writing long form blog posts and articles, I mean, it's still great. And let's keep, inspiring people to continue to read and not just watch, but 82% is incredible. And so just all the numbers I've been looking at are, point in the direction of video being an integral part of a personal branding strategy. And so my guest today, so when I started looking for somebody to interview on this topic, I came across my guest today, Rich Cardona. And first of all, he kept popping up in my feed because, well, he's a video expert, so you won't be surprised to know he posts videos all the time. And they're fun, engaging, and he does different kinds where he's just alone or he's interviewing people, and, inside, outside, really cool and awesome. But then I researched him further, and I have found out that Rich has worked with Dorie Clark. You don't know who that is, be a reader. Look her up, Amazon.com or .ca, and Gary Vee. And to know who Gary Vee is, you don't have to be a reader. You just have to be a watcher. So without further ado, I'm super, super stoked to be talking all things video for the next hour with my guest, Rich Cardona. Hi, Rich.
Hey, good morning.
And you know what? I logged into the broadcasting studio like 5 seconds before going live. But
Yeah,
for once, one interview, I wasn't stressed at all because I'm like, he does it all the time. He doesn't
yeah.
need my prep.
Oh yeah. I actually am still figuring out live a bunch of times myself. So it's like you're ahead of the game for me because I'm always screwing something up. But thank you for having me. I'm really, really pumped and I am always happy to talk about video.
The passion of yours, how did that become a passion? How did you get into video? How, why, what was the first
Yeah.
step?
Um I quit my job at everyone's favorite retailer where everyone gets all their stuff. I was there for 2 years and I was miserable. And before that, I was in the Marine Corps for 17 years. Um, I quit that job to
And wait, that was
do
at Amazon, right? Like you
it
didn't
was.
name it, but it is on your LinkedIn profile.
It
It's no
is. It
secret.
is.
You're working at Amazon.
I try not to be disparaging, but I will say this: my experience is clearly my own experience. So for me, it was unpleasant. Get me out of here. This sucks. So I quit without a plan whatsoever. Which is, I would never advise you to do that. But I had enough faith in myself, which is also not a great plan either, to just say I will figure out exactly what it is I want to do. And I initially thought, because my wife and I had spent 2 months in Europe a couple years prior, and I took probably like 7,000 pictures, and a lot of them came out really well, in my opinion. I was like, okay, like this is something I really love to do, so this is what I'm going to do. And you know what? Um, I really figured the way I always tell it to myself now is you have to be struck by lightning to make it as a photographer. Now, it's just so difficult, if you are that person with the camera and who does all the just like true photography things, to be overlooked because of a great picture someone took on their phone. The specs continue to improve at astronomical levels, and that not only was intimidating to me, but I also completely underestimated how much effort it required to be an amazing photographer and how much you needed to learn. So I decided, and I'm living with my in-laws, by the way, and I was 37 years old at this time. We left our big home and we moved in with my in-laws, which was interesting, but it had to be done. And I'm gonna figure this out. So I kind of gave up photography and started vlogging a little bit. And then I just went to a couple places in this very, very small town in Virginia. And I was just asking them, can I do some video work for you? For a gym, for example, for a free membership, and they're like, okay. Like they had nothing on Yelp, nothing on Facebook, and then there's a cafe. And I'm like, can I just like get lunch here once in a while and I'll just do this for you? And I started doing that, and the videos were okay, but the reason I pivoted that way was because I really feel like people should really be highlighted, their values, what they have to bring to the table, if they want to be, materialized in the marketplace. If they want that to be realized, it has to be on video. So I kind of inherently knew that. And then I just was doing some of those promos and I was learning video editing. I was like, this is awful. Like, this is brutal. Like, it was so difficult. Way
It's
more.
so, it really is terrible.
Yes. So it's just funny because people talk about Photoshop, like, that's crazy. How do you learn Photoshop? And here I am just telling you 60 seconds ago that, there's so much more to photography than it looks. Well, editing is even worse. But I was like, you know what? I got to do this. So then, I was like, okay, telling stories with video, putting music behind it. Okay, that's one thing. But what do I really like to do? I really love to talk to people. I really love to just get to know people. And one person who I had come to know very well and who was a mentor of mine was Claude Silver over at Vayner. And, she's the chief heart officer there. I had been speaking to her. She'd been mentoring me. She was literally helping me, quote unquote, through my time at Amazon, and always reminding me like, you're in the driver's seat. And I was just like, I didn't know what she meant until afterwards. So there in Virginia, was like, okay, I have to go see you. So I finally went and met her, and I had gone with a plan, which was to offer to document her, film her, capture some of her stuff from time to time, because I believe she needed to be out there more, because I'm like, you are just like a supernatural woman. This is nuts. Like, you are unique in so many different ways. Like, tell me how many other chief heart officers you know. She's like, none. So here I am, like, trying to pitch, and I was like, I would love to do this for you for free, and whatever I said, all nervously. And she cut me off and she's like, I trust you. And I'm like, oh man, like, I was like, does she know what she's getting into? Because I don't know. I don't even know what I'm doing. And then it just kind of went on from there. And, you know, to kind of finish off the story, on the real landing point of what my business has become is I went up to New York. I followed her. I went with her in a cab to a panel that she was going to be on. And I was in the cab with her, and I was just asking her very rudimentary softball BS questions about culture and millennial. And I'm not saying any of that stuff's not valid, but she's heard these questions a million times, right? So we're done with the panel. And I was really mad at myself during that whole time, because I'm like, I'm better than that. I absolutely know I could dig deeper. So, but I was just kind of stewing about that. We get in a cab, we're leaving. And I've told the story a couple of times. She said, we're in the cab, it's quiet. And she goes, what was combat like for you? And I was just like, what? Like, it just plainly. And she now says, I always say, like, I can't believe you took that risk. She's like, oh, we already had a relationship. Like, we were already like this. So I felt completely comfortable. And I, without hesitation, just started talking about it and talking about all these different, you know, personal Marine Corps stories, life stories. And then we had an exchange, and she was doing the same with me. We got out and she goes, why weren't you filming that? And I was just like, that's it. That's it. And I arrived to the conclusion that people like her exist in many forms, in many ways. And that is what I'm here to do, is to talk to them just the way we talked, on a normal person-to-person level, so people can aspire to be like them and realize that they have value to bring as well, and that being visible is really important, because you could help many more people that way.
I muted myself before, and now just I'm muted. I'm still, figuring out the tech side of it. What you said really speaks to me, Rich, because I'm finding myself that with my interviews, I'm going down the lane of just focusing a lot on the how-tos.
Yep.
Right. And let me pick your brain, and like more tangible questions, because I feel that people listening want to have those tangible takeaways and learn from the conversation. Right. Sure. Whereas what you just spoke really, resonated with me. What I am allergic to small talk. I love getting to know people and, digging deep. And when I've done interviews that are not live, I've, broken some people down and had them start crying because I asked questions that were very personal. Yes. And I'm still very hesitant to do that live, because right when that happens, the person can say, you know what, no, we're not going to use that, or cut. Whereas here, I just feel like, oh. But it's interesting that you said that, because that's where the true gold is. Otherwise, people are asked the same questions over and over and over again, as you just said.
It's low hanging fruit. You could ask me about some technical video things right now, but what a lot of people can't answer is how their mind works, and what separates them, and what makes them more unique, and why their approach is different. And I really try and do the same. Like right now, I'm trying to do a lot more kind of technical stuff on a podcast I have, but that's just because we're in a situation right now where I think learning is like extremely imperative. But otherwise, like, let's just get to know people, because when people get to see behind the curtain, especially of C-suite executives who are my clients, it humanizes them in a way that a lot of people aren't used to. And again, they have a very special gift, and that gift can be shared with a lot of other people. But more importantly, it's not all about your successes. It's about your failures as well. Like when you said you had someone crying because some of the questions you asked, I love that feeling, only because that vulnerability is going to resonate more than any amazing piece of technical detail you could give to someone, or the ultimate blueprint guide, or whatever you want to call it, that someone can give you. It's nothing like the emotion and the tangible emotions that come out of real life questions and real life experiences.
So let me ask you then, to build on what I asked you originally, but also more in line with what you're saying right now. your failures. So, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to be on video or I don't want to be on social in general, but video in particular intimidates people more than, say, the written word, because, I don't know, there's nothing special about what I'm bringing to the table or nothing unique. Or even people who are very successful in their careers, they say, well, there's so many people that are in the same career as myself. There's nothing unique here. And so then arguably, well, no, everybody has their own story and something else about them. But has it happened to you, without naming names, where you would sit down with a prospective client to try and uncover their story, their angle, what their video series is going to be like, and failed to find it? Is video for everybody or no? But just really, 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 really honest.
I look at it like this. I wrote this down during the intro because this is a thought I've never had in my life that I've actually written down, and I'm very into analogies, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. So let's see. I'm going to roll the dice right now. If you ever heard yourself on an answering machine, you usually cringe. You're just like, oh, I sound like an idiot, whatever it is. But the message isn't for you. It's for someone else, right? So does that mean you're going to stop leaving voicemails and messages? No, the answer is no. So if you think about it like that, and that whatever it is that you do inherently can be of value to someone or just help someone, whether it's a personal story, a professional story, whatever it may be, that usually quells that fear. So, but to go deeper into your question, which is, is it for everyone? No, it's not. Okay. Like, look, I've had a couple clients who I am so behind their mission. I love what they do. It's incredible. They're talented. They're brilliant. But on camera, they just come off flat. And that's not typical. I pride myself in being able to unwrap people. But some people just operate in different mediums. And you said it earlier, like, keep writing your articles. We want to still encourage people to read. Like, there's different mediums. Maybe they're more of a behind the scenes, I don't need to be on camera, I could talk on a podcast all day type person. And they're able to convey and maybe just be looser there because they're really not going to be so obsessive about how they probably look or the body language they're going to evoke. There's that. You could write, but you could do everything. But no, to answer your question, video is not for everyone. However, if you want to give yourself the best chance possible in this digital marketplace where 82%, like you said, is going to be online video, then you should at least try. And the visibility, the engagement, I mean, I don't need to pull up numbers, and you don't need to pull up any more numbers either. It's obvious. And I want to give you, an example. I can have a headshot of myself and I could post that on any platform and write the most amazing copy, but that is nothing. That is not going to help anyone form a connection with me, a virtual connection with me, because they're not going to see how I talk. They're not going to see the eye contact that I make. They're not going to see how I fidget. They're not going to see my body language. They're not going to see my gestures. It's just different. So with all that being said, there's a lot of things that aren't for people, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't try, right? I mean, like, I'm really basic in the type of food I eat, and my wife is always trying to, like, oh, I want to go to this restaurant. I'm like, I can't, and it's brutal. And I'll go try, and once in a while I'm surprised, but most of the time not. But still, that doesn't mean like I shouldn't at least explore, especially when I know it can be astronomically beneficial for me as a personal brand or as a business.
Your voicemail message analogy is definitely on point, because I can tell you that what has made it easy for me to do my LinkedIn Lives in interview format is that that's exactly what's on my mind all the time. This is not about me. The hero is my guest, and I'm here to highlight my guest's, story, skill set, etc. I understand, though, how you apply it to, let's say, if I started just creating videos and it's just myself and talking about my experience, my story, etc. Again, it's the value that I'm trying to bring to people listening. But nonetheless, that part is still way more intimidating than interviewing somebody else or even being interviewed. It's intimidating. So Do you suggest some sort of when you're working with clients, you work with executives or entrepreneurs, do the videos need to be consistent? If so, in what way?
Yeah.
Are there any, let's call them gimmick for a lack
Yep.
of better
Yeah,
word,
I wrote that. Yeah.
when I, for example, did my recruitment drive series that I mentioned with my co-founder, I mean, that's a very popular gimmick, but it works easily because you're driving, it's consistent, and it kind of removes the pressure too, because you're not just like sitting there and staring, at the camera. So what are some of the tips there? Do they need to be similar and consistent? If so, for how long? Or can you really easily mix it up? And I'm not talking about somebody who's always on video, such as yourself, because you can really change it up all the time. Let's say an entrepreneur launches his video
Yep.
endeavor for the first time.
Yep.
What are the tips to get started?
Well, you and I are both obviously enormous fans of Gary Vee. And one thing that I've has always stuck with me when it comes to him is the fact that everyone always says quality over quantity. It's actually the opposite in this scenario. And he's so dead on. The more you put out quantity wise and the more you test and test and test and test, two things are going to happen. You're going to see how the audience responds, and number two, you're going to see where your comfort zone's at. And I'm not saying that you need to operate in your comfort zone, because we all grow once we're outside of our comfort zones a little bit, but the more you test, the more you're probably going to find that sweet spot where you realize that all that quantity is going to help you achieve, like, arrive to that quality. Like, what is that optimal mix that's going to allow you to bring the most value and do it in with the most charisma and in the best light. So that being said, what are the tips and tricks? Here's what I would advise against rather than what I would tell you to do, and that is, don't just turn on the camera and talk about whatever the hell you think people want to hear. If I could get on right now and tell you about two of the meetings I was on this morning and how I'm concerned that I'm not going to be able to run this afternoon because my schedule is completely packed, because I purposely pack my Fridays and all this other stuff. But is that good content? Probably not. We all want to talk about whatever we want to talk about. But when you go on camera, when you start to make videos, it can't necessarily be like, I'm just going to vent or I'm just going to walk people through my day. Now, there is something to documenting the journey that is very, very special, but it can be done with strategy. So there's a saying that says, research before you record, meaning, what the hell does my audience want to hear about right now? And I don't mean my audience. I mean my industry audience, the people who are interested in video marketing, the people who are interested in personal branding. For me, another audience segment for me is veterans who are transitioning service members. Like, what can I do to add value there? So yes, of course you can mix it up, and yes, you need to see what happens. Now, one funny thing is, and I was actually talking to Shay Rowbottom the other day about this. I go, it's so funny. Anytime my daughter, my 3-month-old, who's now 3 months, Cicely, I was like, anytime she's in my videos, I was like, those do so well. And she's like, you should do those once in a while. But it's funny because the early video person might be like, well, she's going to be in all my videos. So, because you want to lean on it. But the truth is, you can mix it up, but you have to research before you record. And here's a couple ways you can determine what to do and how to do that. I'm a really big fan of Google Alerts. Okay. So I have Google Alerts for Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, everything. I have Google Alerts for content marketing. You know why? Because I would love to see what comes out, if there's any changes on those platforms, if there's any statistics about content marketing. Like, I just learned the other day that unfortunately, LinkedIn, sorry, but you have fallen, plummeting, so to speak, in the number of downloads since the pandemic, while TikTok and Snapchat are going through the roof at over 200% a month. Why is that important? Because if you just want to go test it out on some of those other platforms, great. But in my opinion, if LinkedIn is having less downloads than they have had in a long time, this is a great time to go in and do the quantity to arrive to your quality. Because if you're recording and you're talking, you want to make all your mistakes when no one's watching. So then you get to your good point And then you're bulletproof once you start really honing in on those kind of segments that you're going to pay attention to. The other thing I would say is there's probably 3 to 4 lanes, 3 to 4 lanes of, or themes, I'd like to say, that you really should kind of stick to. I have a new client. He's in insurance, and he really wants to disrupt the way insurance people sell. He goes, people think I golf all the time, and people think, this is all just about car insurance and life insurance. He goes, for me, it's about being a father and realizing how important life insurance really is, and talking to and I'm like, good. And this guy is funny. He's a surfer, and he's got long hair, and he just doesn't look like what you would think. And he goes, I don't want to look like what everyone thinks. I just want to be me. I go, so how in the world did you end up being an agency owner of this insurance company? So we were just talking. And anytime I talk to people, there's always like a notepad, and I'm just like, we'll be done in 5 minutes. I'm like, that's content, that's content, that's content, that's content, that's content. So the point is this, is that you can learn a lot of what people like to talk about. And if you can make that connection to what they want to talk about and what is desired by the public, then you're going to win. And you should probably keep 3 to 4 themes about what you're going to talk about. I shouldn't be talking about the school system. I shouldn't be talking about architecture. I shouldn't be talking about stocks and bonds. Like, that's just not my lane. I could talk about entrepreneurship. I could talk about the military. I could talk about video marketing, and I could talk about personal branding. And for the most part, with the exception of those couple family posts once in a while, that's what I talk about.
Interesting. I find that I'm definitely not clear in my lanes and a little bit scattered, but I will just count it that this is my, testing phase.
Yes.
To figure out what works best. But I so agree with you on the parenting posts. The couple of times I've posted about my kids, my most popular ones, and this is written content. I remember I wrote something really basic about, we had a snowstorm in Montreal and my son's daycare was still open. And I said, so unfair. Like, we're all sitting at home, and like, why do these people have to work? And I figured it's still pertinent. I'm a recruiter. I'm writing about people working, so it's not completely disconnected. Exploded.
Yes.
All the other things they do, who cares? But once I wrote about daycares being open and people agreed, disagreed, it created this whole thing. Yep. One of our
relatable though. Sorry, that's relatable.
Right.
It's super relatable. So it's like funny, so of course it's going to blow up. I mean, and that's vulnerability, right? Like, you were talking about emotionally how you felt about something. So.
Right. But then, so the question is, and it ties into one of the comments questions from our viewer. And by the way, anybody who has questions for Rich, I try to keep on top of them and read them and include, if there are questions, into the conversation. So Howard Wiseman says that he's seen many senior leaders, live video, and it does not come off as genuine. Sounds a little bit more like preaching, telling, not as relatable. You just talked about being more authentic and relatable. So what, really tangible feedback would you give to them? And then, and that happens more often than not. Somebody who's really, cool and chill in real life will go in front of a camera and just like go like this and go a bit of like a robot, and it does sound preachy. So how do you work with your clients to overcome that, especially at the beginning?
So we all have what I like to think of as our official voice. If I know I'm going to be presenting at an important meeting, I might be talking differently than I am now. Not usually, not me. I've gotten over that a long time ago, but the inclination to unlearn that behavior is extremely difficult. And that's why I do what I do, to kind of help soften it and to help unwrap some of those guests. So the senior leaders, they're used to being in presentation mode. They're used to being in an authoritative delivery, so to speak.
Right.
So a lot of this comes into self-awareness and asking yourself. You have to ask yourself, if I was in the audience, would this be entertaining in any way, shape, or form? Now, I'm not talking about, an update where we are talking about how the pandemic is going to affect our work schedule or our ability to have our store open or anything like that. I'm not talking about like straight delivery of critical information. I'm talking about if you're going to go live and you want to and you want to deliver information and provide value, then are you doing anything differently than all the other executives that are being on there? And this does not mean, when you talked about gimmicks and angles earlier, does that mean I should wear a cowboy hat and some flair to just kind of look like I'm goofy? Like, no, that's not what it is. But ask yourself, what if I was just talking to my daughter? Or what if I was just talking to my favorite cousin? How would I package this information to where it's digestible and I could keep people's attention? Everyone knows when you order something at Starbucks and you know it's going to be a couple minutes because the line's been already long, you're going to take out your phone and look after. Everyone's attention span is very, very short, and that's just the way it is, and that's fine. So how do you keep someone's attention if you're a senior leader trying to give information? You need to break it down like you're talking to someone young, is advice I like to give, because, and that might sound like trivial, but it helps you be more animated. And I think that's the first thing. Now, if I'm a senior leader and I'm going LinkedIn Live or whatever it may be, the other piece of advice I always give, and it really is like a light bulb for everybody, is if I'm talking right now and you aren't on and I'm just going live, a lot of people have the feeling that thousands of people are watching their LinkedIn Live and like everyone in the world's going to see it. Like, absolutely not. You and I both know that our posts, maybe 10% of our connections see them, no matter how much we want that to happen and it to be 100%, like, it's just not that way. So what happens is you can tell yourself, who am I trying to influence? Who am I trying to help? And how am I trying to serve? And then I imagine you. I'm like, okay, maybe she needs some tips, and I'm going to focus on one person who I know I've helped, or one person who I know needs my help, or just create my avatar, so to speak, of an individual, and I'm going to talk to them. And if I talk to them, I'm probably going to come across much more endearing than if I'm trying to be official Rich talking to 1,000 imaginary people. And I think those are a couple of things that really change the game a lot for the people I work with.
It's on point advice for public speaking in general too, because when I first started giving talks, I felt, and you see, this is how I usually am. There's a lot of sparkle, color, right? And I'm pretty casual,
Yeah.
And I say things, and sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said it, and that's just how I am. But when I first started giving talks, I felt, well, people are gonna think I'm not serious, right? And I want to be serious, so I would just stand there and try to wear a suit, and not only was it boring as hell, it made me so nervous because it wasn't myself. So I tried to stay in character, in that character, and that just didn't work. But how do you still, let's unpack, and we have a couple more questions, but let's unpack when you say it has to be entertaining. So example for you, a fellow entrepreneur that I really admire and look up to, his name is Sean Jahal. He's in Montreal. He's really awesome. He just started. Is that your wife?
My wife, yes.
Hi.
I knew. I saw her computer in here. I was like, oh no, she's gonna have to come in and get it.
She's gonna have to come in. And my mother did that the other day. And you know what my mother did? I'm live on video, right? And she goes in the back and she goes really slowly. And I'm like, it doesn't make it less apparent. Going, right? So Sean Jahal, he's an entrepreneur and he's a leadership consultant as well. So he just started his video series. He just did one. Okay. So he wants to do those really short 1 minute, maybe 1 minute and a half, just tip, update, something.
Yep.
But so it's mostly on leadership, but I mean, it's in times of crisis, right? It's not any other. You can't just be like really haha anecdotal. So define entertaining, like somebody like him, but a topic is leadership. How are you entertaining?
Leadership is one of the most oversaturated, completely sought after. Everyone thinks they're going to make it in leadership and leadership consulting. Well, the bad news is, like I said, everyone thinks that. So you're competing with a lot of different people. So how can you differentiate? How can you make it entertaining? I'm going to give you an example right now. When I was training for my role at Amazon, our facility wasn't even built yet. So we had to train in Tampa, Florida. So every morning we had to go to that facility, an established facility, and we'd go train with the existing workforce there. So we'd have to go, and it was still dark at 5:30 in the morning when we were on the way, and I always had to get on the highway. Driving on the highway in my rental car, a little bit of rain this morning, having my coffee, just kind of thinking, okay, like thinking about everything that's going to happen in the day ahead. And here I am on the highway, and I see in the lane, headlights facing me, in my lane on my side. And I am like, holy S, put on the brakes, the screech, the whole thing. And I see brake lights everywhere. So I pull over and I see one car that's facing me was hit. And then there was another car that was upside down. So my immediate response was, I need to help. And I put my emergency signals on, and my car was in the stupidest possible place I ever could have left it because I was so intent on going to try and help. So what I actually did was, I didn't really exacerbate the situation, but there was screeching tires behind me, like over and over. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get hit. Someone's going to hit my car. My car's going to hit me. Like, this is bad. We're on a highway. And I just went on with it. So I went to the upside down car. I opened the door. There's two elderly people who couldn't get out any other way. So I help them out. And then the police come, and then everything gets under control. The police take my name, and I'm like, I didn't see anything, but this is what it looks like it happened, blah, 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 blah. And then I go to work, and then I get to work, and a couple people were like, dude, we saw you out there. And they're just like, are you okay? And I like almost lost my mind. Like, you saw me out there and like you didn't stop. So this was a leadership lesson for me. It demonstrated immediately that I came from a very unique place in the Marine Corps where people will fall all over each other to make sure that you're okay. They will be there to support you. And that's why my response was not just about me. And this is not a story about like, Rich, whatever. This is a leadership lesson. I had to realize right away that the expectation I had of people on the outside was very different from the people I had of the expectation of the people on the inside. So what am I telling you all this for? Is you're saying, how do you entertain people? You have to tell stories that are yours, that someone can relate to. Hopefully during that, and I've never like practiced that before, by the way, hopefully you were imagining yourself in that situation. Like, what would I have done? Or, oh my God, that would have sucked. Or, what did it look like? You're putting yourself in the situation. And if you are able to do that, then you are going to break people from the monotony that they might be feeling from your bored, tired ass, LinkedIn Live. If you were just going to talk to them and just be like, here's some information. I hope you digest it. Give people a story that takes them somewhere else. And if you can tie a lesson to it, like hopefully, that was completely like off the cuff. Hopefully that was like a leadership lesson story that expectation management and emotional, intelligence, it comes in very different forms. Then it's going to stick. And then you become memorable. That person is going to go back to their workplace or home. And hopefully they're telling that story to their wife and be like, man, this dude was telling me this story and I couldn't believe that. Or maybe that person's like, I wouldn't have stopped either. Like, I had to get to work, who knows? But if that conversation continues on past that 1 minute live or that 30-minute speech that you're giving somewhere, then I think you've won.
Speechless here. That was a good one. That was really good. But so then what about length? So if you were to, deliver the story and also, give some sort of a takeaway where people would apply it, if it's not, so also, I just want to know about video length for different formats. My interviews have been an hour long. Sometimes, some guests feels like it's too long. With you, I know I'm going to be like, I keep looking at the time. I'm like, no, not yet. I have more questions.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's still best practices. So for a video that would be similar to what you just described, what's best length? And then this style, interview style, what's best length for that ish, give or take?
So it really depends on the platform. Like, if you really want to go long and hard, or maybe you're recording a keynote or something like that, then that content should be on YouTube. YouTube is deliberately designed. I mean, everyone knows this, but if you don't know, it's a search engine. It's only number 2 to Google. So if I want to try and make lasagna from scratch, I'm going to go to YouTube. I'm not, or if I go to Google, it's going to take me to YouTube because I'm a video guy. I want to watch a video on how to do it. I don't want to read about it. So there's your long form content. This platform specifically is a newsfeed platform, which means, people are sometimes in and out and see you later. I just want to get my stuff, support the people, support my connections, look about some information, and that's it. So look, I like to go live for a long time too. And I also do so with the expectation that those are probably not going to just like blow it out of the water. Everyone likes small, bite-sized, digestible piece of information that are hard-hitting, fast, and that stop them from scrolling, because you and I both know that this platform is very saturated with a lot of inactive users and people who show up from time to time. So what happens is that clogs up your newsfeed and you're just like, this sucks. Another reason why video is so critical is because how are you going to stop people from scrolling? How are you going to stop people from scrolling in a platform that, especially right now, everyone's like, well, I guess I'm going to be on it more than usual. So length here, because it's newsfeed, in my opinion, is 60 seconds. Like, try and be around 60 seconds. If you're just trying to deliver like a very good, concise piece of information. A live is obviously very different. So that's number one, is kind of know the platform. And two, you know how much time you need to present what you got to present. If you're just dragging it out because maybe you didn't prepare, or if you're dragging it out because maybe you feel that what you have to say is entertaining, then of course you're putting yourself back in the position where you're worrying about what you think about it and not what other people may think about it, which is just the easiest mistake. So those are what I would kind of say are some of the best practices, but shorter is better. And this is like the biggest piece of advice I could give. A lot of people who have hired us before, like, want to do like a good long promo of something they did or an event or whatever. I'm like, that's great. Or for the website, I'm like, that's fine. But unless people are going to your website over and over and over every day, then that video is meaningless. This is a place that relies on you to continuously just give people value in some way, shape, or form, so that people can network and so that people can collaborate. So that way people can look for that next job. So that way people could find someone they want to hire. So that way people could look at the strategic partnerships. So the information and the value needs to be consistent, which means you need to show up more often than you probably want to. But that is probably the biggest piece. One piece of and I always relate it. Breaking Bad. Whereas, can you see it? Yeah, no, you can't see it. I have a poster of Walter and Mr. White, and it's just this really cool picture I got in Rome. Let me try and show it. There it is. There. No, I can't even do it there. So, thank you. So, just I loved it, and I loved that show, and I was like, this is one of the best shows I've ever seen. Yes, it was crazy, but I just thought it was amazing. Now, if that was on AMC, so you couldn't binge it yet at the beginning. So let's just say I saw episode 1 and I'm like, this was unbelievable. And then, next week it comes on, I'm like, this is insane. And then it just disappears for like 8 weeks. And then it comes back. I'm just like, I've fallen out of love with you. Like, and if you're going to do that to me all the time, then forget it. So that's what I call like the drive-by platform users, right? Like, if you just drive by and just drop some platform in from time to time, you're never going to have the consistency to actually build a brand that consistently follows you. So I think it's really important to understand what each platform wants. And then when it comes to video, there's certainly best practices. Like, I mean, pretty much across the line, shorter is better, which is why TikTok, for example, usually defaults to 15-second videos, and then the max is 60 seconds. And you know what? You know how creative people get to try and make sure they get everything they need into that 15 or 60 seconds? And by the way, I have to plug TikTok just for a little bit, because I hit 1 million views yesterday, and I have like 40 posts, and I'm like, it would have taken me 20 years to get that on Instagram. Yeah, it's crazy. And I'm just experimenting.
What's your handle?
Rich Cardona.
But
I also have one called, and I just changed the name to the Marine Marketer or something like that, because I was testing that one who was fun. I was testing that one, got to 1 million. I'm like, cool. Now I know if I just go into this other handle that I also have and just start putting marketing information out there, content marketing, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever, that I know at some point that can reap me business benefits, or at least visibility, which is all we all want.
Interesting. Yeah, I've started exploring TikTok. I interviewed the other day Mayan Gordon. I
me
think,
too.
Yeah, we're connected. We're both connected with her, and I'm very curious, but I'm still not sure of the angle. I feel you need to be either creative or skilled at something or funny, and I'm neither. So anyways, but I'll watch yours and maybe I'll get some inspiration. I want to include some of the questions that
Yes, please.
we have from our viewers. There are a lot of comments and then some questions. Stephen Short says Recruitment Drive was a great name. Of course, it was, Stephen. You came up with it. Thank you very much. That's a plug for himself. And then Lisa, I just scrolled by her comment. Lisa asks, any thoughts on, preparing and rehearsing? Obviously, if it's not live, just preparing and rehearsing and doing multiple takes before recording. What are your recommendations there? Or do you feel it then will look less authentic?
There's a delete button on every phone and every camera. So you can try it out, and done is better than perfect. However, if you get into the habit of just being like, that's not right, that one's not good, that one's not good, and you're just like deleting every single thing that you put out or that you video that you try and create, then you're never going to get anywhere. So I always like to say, in the Marine Corps, we always say a 70% solution is good. You need action, so just act. But should you script? Should you prepare? Like, if that's what you need to do it. But if you're starting to do one of these numbers and you're, like you said, you're a couple inches taller in your seat and you're like, today we're going to talk about, and then you're like looking at, like, no, like at some point you have to just remember, if I was in person talking to someone like this, would that be normal? Would this, or would they be like, this is very awkward?
Right.
So you have to imagine, again, like, if I was sitting down with someone for coffee, would I be delivering it like this? And if the answer is no, then you should go back and delete it and try it again. But it obviously helps. You would never go and give a keynote, without having an outline or preparing. I mean, maybe, but the same thing. So this might be a big endeavor for someone who's not been on video before. So of course, give yourself the guardrails, to feel a little bit safer. But as time goes on, if there's mistakes, oh well, that just obviously makes you more realistic, and it also shows that you're not entirely concerned, because there's no way you would posted that without looking at it. Like, of course you review every video that you're about to post. So if you're okay with the mistakes, then that says a lot about you, in my opinion. So I think done is better than perfect.
But how then? Because let's call it casual, because if I'm going and grabbing coffee with a girlfriend, I could be very casual. But then how casual is too casual? Are there any tips to suggest? Well, some are obvious, like don't,
Yeah.
like lounge on a couch in your pajamas, unless that's your brand, right? Because it could be you're just representing something very casual. But then what tips do you give to your clients as far as, I don't know, backdrop, lighting, where's that fine balance not to look a little bit too relaxed?
Yeah, a couple. So you just want to be in a good light, and that's literal and figurative. Literal in the sense that you want to be positioned in front of natural light or have a light in front of you. You never want to be backlit, where you're going to be blurred out and it's hard and pixelated when people look to see you. Sound, okay, like I forget who told me this, but I don't know, maybe it was Gary Vee, but Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, the audio is horrible and the video is horrible, but everyone knows that. Everyone knows that speech, because it just left you with so much to like ponder and to think about. So, the audio doesn't have to be perfect either. However, you could lose people if the audio is absolutely horrible. So just try and be in somewhere that's carpeted if you're inside, somewhere that's not around a construction site if you're outside, and try not to be staring into the sun and all these different things. So those are just a couple little things. But when it comes to how casual it should be, look, it's far more practical for people to realize you filmed on your phone than with an amazing camera or with amazing audio. So if you're on your phone, that's completely fine. Number one, the specs are good enough anyway. Number two is, what is, like, in the literal or figurative sense, like, what's too casual? Are you really, you'll know you're too casual, or you're too casual if you're just really kind of deviating from the core message. Okay, you're gonna realize you're too casual if you're just talking about everything that's going on. If I elaborated on my wife coming in earlier and I spent 5 minutes on that, that's like too casual. It's all of a sudden I just lost my train of thought, and I'm not delivering anything about video. I'm not delivering anything actionable for your audience. So there's that. And as far as how you dress, I mean, right now it's like I feel like anyone could get away with anything. You could be in your pajamas and I could be in my pajamas, right, too, because of the way it is. But as far as appearance, how do you normally show up? Like how do you normally show up? Because that's how you should show up. So yeah, that's an interesting question, but I've never really thought about it at length. This is very cliche, but you just have to be yourself.
Interesting. And I ask because, I used to be in this phase of life where I would always wear a toque. I think it's a Canadian thing, like the hat,
Yep.
like a beanie style, whatever. And I realized that, um, a male speaker can get away with things like that. Like Gary Vee wears like whatever, and nobody cares, and hoodies and whatever. But I spoke at an event, and a couple of attendees came up to the organizer and said, "Wow, we were really surprised that she, had something of value to say, and it was quite impactful and a great talk." She said, "Well, why were you surprised?" And they said, "Well, the way she looked." And I was very into like the whole sneaker, I like felt Silicon Valley for a moment, didn't fly as much. Then I did it again, got similar feedback, and then thought, okay, well, I'm gonna drop that. So it's interesting, that
I want to
balance.
make a comment on that. Here's the thing, though. The fact that they were surprised, okay, that's one thing, but you already delivered value, right? So the second piece of value that you delivered, which was probably inadvertent, was the fact that you're like, I don't care. I'm going to wear this on stage and that's just how I'm going to be. Like, that's another piece of value because you never know if one person who saw that or who's in the audience said, I want to have that kind of courage or that kind of self-esteem, because they don't see anything wrong with it. Then it's like, to me, it's like you literally just doubled down. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying. And I think, I think once you're on video enough or once you've done enough of these things, like Gary Vee, at some point he was wearing collared shirts all the time and not just beanies and t-shirts. You kind of just evolve from it and your audience respects you for who you are. And you realize like, okay, I'm going to wear whatever. And these people are going to stick around because I've just consistently give them something to chew on.
Okay, I like that. That gives me hope. That means that at some point I can pull out my tiara collection and go all in Eastern European on everybody, and just, feel fully myself. Okay, so another question. Amna Akram is asking, so she really enjoyed your story and the whole piece on storytelling. And then she said, any tips on how we can exercise our mind to come up with the relatable stories?
So yes, this is very easy. This is like a 3-step process that I use from one of the best storytellers out there. Her name is Kendra Hall. I recommend her book, Stories That Stick. But the simplest way, it's like fractions. Like what's a reduced fraction? There's so many pieces. You could talk about the hero's journey, and you could talk about the guide, and you could talk about all these things, the arc. All you really need is 3 pieces. One piece is, what is the normal? Okay, what is the normal? What is the event or explosion? And then what is the new normal? Like, this pandemic is literally that, right? It's like, before this, we were all working at offices. Before this, we could go to any restaurant, anytime, to do whatever it is we wanted. The explosion was this virus took the entire world by storm. The new normal is we're quarantined. We're spending a lot more time with our family. We're working from home. People are at work on Zoom calls in their underwear, just acting crazy. Like, everyone, it's just different. That's the new normal. If you want to get into, that story I told earlier about that, me driving to work, it was my normal was being surrounded by people that were completely selfless all the time. The explosion or event was the fact that, I was in this very dangerous situation and I wanted to help. And then the new normal was realizing that because I didn't get the help I wanted or needed by people who saw me that, in distress, so to speak, was that I needed to make sure that I didn't generalize the entire community and into one bucket. So the new normal was I had to heighten my emotional intelligence and not judge the people who didn't help, but just realize that they don't come from the same background and that things are different. So normal, explosion, or event, and then new normal. And that usually is going to be probably the easiest way to tap into a story and be like, okay, what is the takeaway from this? Because if you learn something from that story, someone else is going to have their own version of that story and they're going to learn just as much.
Interesting. And just to say, quick side note, but I have such massive amount of respect for military personnel, just huge, huge, huge. And I was fortunate enough to spend a day on a Canadian military base doing simulations throughout the
Yeah.
day. I left humbled out of my mind. And you know, another quick thing, because military personnel, there are a lot of misconceptions. There are a
Sure.
lot of things that you don't realize, don't expect until you're a little bit more immersed. And you know, I was going in so intimidated because I felt that, well, first of all, it felt intrusive, right? Like you come in there to, you know, play for a day where this is what people do for life, right? So there was that too. And then I also expected that it would just be very, you know, cold and very distant and just very, you know, official. But what you're describing there, that sense of, you know, helping and being present and that camaraderie, even as an outsider, I felt it so deeply. So I just have to say that that's a complete, you know,
Love it.
derailing conversation, but I have to say that. Um, and also just your background, I have to say, like, it's ridiculous. Like, you were in the military, and then you worked at Amazon, and now you're consulting to executives and doing video. It's really very complex.
Yeah.
Um, Michael asks, standing, sitting, doesn't matter.
That's a great, great, great question. I think if we sit, we're more likely to be kind of less charismatic, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Sometimes you need to be sitting, and maybe it's just comfortable. Sometimes if people are stand, it's just like that scene in Talladega Nights. He's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like you might just like do
Right.
weird stuff. So I guess it's that's a really good question. I would say test the two and be like, which one did you like better? Like, this is certainly something that you can rely on your gut feel in a lot of ways to realize where you want to be. So test it out, I would say, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I've never done standing. I should try it out. Captions, no captions, doesn't matter on the shorter
Captions
videos.
increase. Yeah, captions increase the visibility. I think there's numbers as high as 80%, but let's just say 50%. Because not now, because everyone's working from home, it seems like. But, you know, if I'm on the subway, there's no way I could hear it. And if I can hear it, it's still probably going to be distractible. So, like, yes, I want to be able to read it. This is a funny one, but like, look, a lot of people are reading or watching something in the bathroom, you know, and it's just like, okay, so it's like captions. I don't have to have the volume on ever. If I see captions, then it definitely helps. And second, it's just there's people who literally just can't or who are hearing impaired. So it's like obviously favors them as well. So captions is always a good thing. And sometimes for whatever reason, when I see captions, I do a lot more of the reading and I look up at the person a little bit less and I just kind of read it and it sticks a little bit better than if I had just heard it. So captions are certainly a good way to go. There's literally no drawback to using captions.
Mhm. Also comes in very handy when you're scrolling while you're trying to put your kids to sleep or just waiting for them to fall asleep. Can't use
Oh
any
yeah,
songs for that, and sometimes it's long.
hundred
Um,
percent.
yeah. Anyways, um, I use rev.com for
Same.
captions. Same, you recommend that too. What about other tools? Neil is asking, you know, what tools do you use to automate any of the process of video creation? What are some of the tools you recommend, if any?
So I'm really glad about that. I want to do like a live or like a week on this one phone app called InShot. And it's just really, I mean, I haven't tried too many, but that one is really simple. And I feel like so many people would get value out of realizing they could stitch together a 1 or 2 minute piece of content with multiple different videos and they could add sound effects or stickers or emojis in certain places and realize like, wow, it is not that difficult. So to answer that question, one of the easiest things if you're limited to your phone is there's apps, but I would say InShot app is very good. Some of the other tools, like the more professional tools, I use Adobe Premiere Pro for my editing, rev.com, like you mentioned, for captions, although they just raised their prices. So it's like hurting a little bit more than usual. So, but that, and you know, as far as equipment, I mean, I kind of mentioned it before. You don't need anything other than your phone. Shay Robottom uses her phone. That's it. Like, it's like, okay. So, you know, I would focus on the delivery and the content ideas itself before all the other stuff. And that other stuff, if anything, is going to probably be time consuming, but you could probably find people to do it for you. And then just so you can continue to crank out content and just press record.
Well, I have about 100 more questions, but we're out of time.
Yeah.
I have so many. I'm really, really stoked that we connected, Rich, and
Yeah.
you're just a wealth of information. And so I want to ask you now for people who would like your help. So, who is your core customer? So, who should, I'll make it easier, who should not reach out to you? I'll do what you did before. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you what not to do. And then what's the best way to reach you? And what is the core service offering that you provide?
Sure. So on LinkedIn is the best, Rich Cardona. You could send me a DM. Please let me know specifically if you're contacting me because as a result of this. So that way, if you ever want to do something, I could certainly hook you up because I was on the show. But the core offerings are threefold. My COO and I and our team, we act as a fractional marketing team to small business owners who usually have not spent a dollar on marketing. So as you can imagine right now, like that's been actually a lot of our leads recently because a lot of people are like, we need to make a major shift, which involves being on digital and social. So we've been getting contact. That's, I would say, our highest offering. And then we have two other offerings where we film, edit, distribute your content for you. We help you with the content strategy. We help you come up with the titles. We help you with the research. We do all of it. So that way you could do basically nothing. If I can't come film you or one of my videographers can't come film you, we could do something like this on Zoom, or I could just send you a tripod kit and you could do them on your phone. And if you need coaching during that, then we'll make ourselves available so we could help you when you get intimidated or frozen or whatever it may be. So who shouldn't reach out? If you're truly not in a position to explore spending money on marketing, it's certainly a lot better for us to not have to convince you because time is very valuable for everyone, and we want to just be able to serve people who are ready. And I don't mean that from a business sense, like I want to close. We are very, very particular about who we work with because we value values. We value values over money, like all the time. I promise you that. So. You certainly have to understand the power of video and personal branding. And maybe what it is you just don't know how to tell your own story. And maybe you don't want to fumble around trying to learn all these things in the video marketing world. And you need someone to take it off your plate. That is where we come in. If you don't fall into those categories, it's probably, not going to be fruitful for either of us, but please reach out to me if you need any help. I'll be happy to.
Cool. You also sound like you were very fun to work with. So I'm sure you make it a really cool and fun experience.
I'm like this. I'm just here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and your insight and all the information. And time literally flew. So I might be asking you to come back again. So
No
just
problem.
a heads up.
No problem.
Happy Easter.
You too.